The National Desk, America's News, now.
This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people.
A historic verdict in Trump's hush money trial. What comes next for the former president? Plus,
the algorithm is something that most companies hide. It's essentially their secret sauce.
rising to the top. A leak from Google reveals how the search engine decides which websites you see and which ones you don't. And later,
maybe instead of having 2 or 3 stops in an area, you go down to only 1 stop.
rethinking the bus driver shortage, how artificial intelligence is helping schools and parents save time and keep kids safe. From the nation's capital, this is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Dee Gatton. Thank you for joining us. On this weekend edition, we take a look at the big headlines of the week and look ahead at what to expect, starting with the 4 big stories we've been following this week. Catching criminals at the southern border, the policy change helping vet asylum seekers, plus a suspected top assassin extradited to the U.S. Tensions flaring between Israel and Egypt after Israel takes control of a strip of land crucial to Hamas. Home prices hitting record levels for the 6th time this year, which Americans could soon see their mortgage payments skyrocket. But first, former President Trump convicted on all counts in his hush money trial. New reaction pouring in this weekend. It's impossible at this point to know what, if any, impact this will have on the presidential election. Both the Trump and Biden campaigns have a similar message. It's more important than ever that voters turn out in November. Here's national correspondent Atra El-Nashar.
An angry former president and now convicted felon sounding off from Trump Tower Friday morning.
This is a scam. There's a rigged trial. So we're going to show them that we're going to fight. It's actually, I don't know, it's something where I'm wired in such a way that a lot of people would have gone away a long time ago.
Both the Trump and Biden campaigns were quick to fundraise off the verdict, Trump calling himself a political prisoner despite not being sentenced yet. His campaign claims to have raised almost $35 million Thursday. The Biden team tells supporters there is still only one way to keep Donald Trump out of the Oval Office, at the ballot box. The president saying this from the White House.
Now he'll be given the opportunity, as he should, to appeal that decision just like everyone else has that opportunity. And it's reckless. It's dangerous. It's irresponsible for anyone to say this was rigged just because they don't like the verdict.
As for whether it helps or hurts Trump's chances in November, it's anyone's guess.
I mean, I'm hearing people say, I had no intention of voting for Donald Trump, and now I am.
Let's not underestimate that there is a problem. Think about this. Those numbers are like 11%, less likely to vote for him.
We will make America stronger.
The verdict is expected to energize Trump's base, so the question is, will it sway swing voters? Polls give mixed answers. According to an NPR PBS Marist poll released Thursday morning, while 2/3 of overall voters say it won't make a difference, 11% of independent voters say they'd be less likely to vote for him if found guilty in the New York case. 15% said it would make them more likely. July 11th is the sentencing hearing for this case, and then Trump's team can start the appeal process. But before that, Trump's conviction is sure to be a central focus in the first presidential debate set for June 27th. In Washington, I'm Atra El-Nashar for the National Desk, America's News Now.
Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts declining to meet with lawmakers over what they say is an ethics crisis. Roberts citing the separation of powers concerns and the importance of preserving judicial independence as reasons. The request from Democratic Senators Dick Durbin and Sheldon Whitehouse came just a day after Justice Alito rejected lawmakers' demands to recuse himself from Capitol riot-related cases. Alito has been under fire after it was revealed 2 politically charged flags were displayed outside his homes. Israel's announcement that it has seized tactical control of a border strip between Gaza and Egypt may further inflame tensions between Israel and Egypt. Israeli forces seized the Philadelphia corridor, which they say allows Hamas to rearm itself by smuggling munitions into Gaza through tunnels from Egypt. Earlier this year, Egypt warned Israel against occupying this corridor, saying it would pose a serious threat to relations. Egypt denies there's any tunnels under the border. Harvard University says it will no longer weigh in on public matters unless they impact the school's core function. The school's leaders announced the new policy after forming a working group to debate when the university should speak out. In a statement, the group warned that the integrity and credibility of the institution are compromised when the university speaks officially on matters outside its institutional area of expertise. Right now, a Google document leak is shedding light on how the tech giant decides what content you see and don't see. Here's national correspondent Kayla Gaskins.
It's one of the internet's greatest mysteries. How exactly does one get a website to the top of a Google search, or at least appear on the first page?
The algorithm is something that most companies hide. It's essentially their secret sauce.
A recent leak of internal company documents appears to, at least partially, lift the veil on how Google search ranks websites. Experts say some of the data in the documents appears to contradict what Google says publicly about how the engine works.
We've been lied to. The truth needs to come out.
For example, Google appears to factor in the number of clicks a page gets while ranking a website rather than how reputable a source is. Google has previously denied using this method. It's a method critics say helps spread disinformation. For decades, companies, news organizations, nonprofits, and politicians have spent millions, if not billions of dollars to master Google in order to get their message or product the most views.
I know companies that literally could live and die because margins are so razor thin based upon what page they are on.
Search engine optimization consultant Irfam Azimi obtained the 2,500 pages of documents and pushed to have them published, arguing the public deserves transparency from Google.
So webmasters and business owners can make better business decisions on optimizing for Google search.
We reached out to Google. The spokesperson sent us a statement saying we would caution against making inaccurate assumptions about search based on out of context, outdated, or incomplete information. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins reporting for the National Desk, America's News Now.
OpenAI has begun training a new artificial intelligence model. The Microsoft-backed company says it's also setting up a safety and security committee to guide operations. This after the company has seen a number of key resignations, with employees claiming safety takes a backseat to shiny new products. OpenAI says the new model will succeed the GPT-4 system that supports the popular online chatbot ChatGPT. New details on the divide over remote work. According to job site ladders, most high-paying jobs are now in office. Less than 4% of roles that pay more than $250,000 a year are fully remote, and fewer than 1% are hybrid. Managers cited things like cohesion, mentorship, and innovation as justification for returning to the office. But many analysts say the actual reasons are much simpler: control and an attachment to how things were in the past. Checking on your money, U.S. home prices hit a record high in March. According to the S&P CoreLogic Case-Shiller Index, home prices across the country jumped 6.5% in March from a year earlier, the sixth time the index has reached a new record over the past year. According to the report, there's strong demand for housing in San Diego, New York, Cleveland, and Los Angeles. Some Americans could soon see their mortgage payments skyrocket. I'm with Courtney from the Fact Check team. Break this down for us. Who's at risk?
Sure, Dee Dee. So homeowners who secured adjustable rate mortgages could face higher monthly payments in some cases almost double what they were paying as the term of their loan comes to an end. And for context, an adjustable rate mortgage is exactly what it sounds like, a loan with an interest rate that fluctuates periodically, and the initial interest rate is typically lower than a fixed rate mortgage, making it a good choice if you plan to own your home for only a few years.
How many people are going to be impacted by this?
That is a really good question. Nearly 2 million homes that average at about $1 million were purchased in 2019 using an adjustable rate mortgage, according to Bloomberg. And because the initial period for these loans is usually 3, 5, 7, or 10 years, many of them will be maturing this year. So borrowers will have to pay market rates or refinance at the best rate they can get. And if we do the math, a mortgage based on a 2019 interest rate of 3.5% is going to almost double to around 6.5%.
And when you think about it, it's so unfortunate because people did this to initially make it more affordable.
For sure, yep.
Courtney, thank you. Courtney will be back with us in just a bit with more on a new mortgage program that could benefit some struggling consumers. It's now easier for Americans to file an anonymous complaint if they feel their rights under the Emergency Medical Treatment and Labor Act were violated. The law requires hospitals to treat patients to the point they're stable, regardless of their ability to pay. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services set up the new site. If a hospital is found to have violated the law, they could lose federal Medicare funding. The child care shortage doesn't just impact American civilians, it's also a problem for military families. The Pentagon offers subsidized child care for 200,000 children, but it's struggling to find enough workers to fill the gap. As a result, about 9,000 kids are now on a month-long wait list. Ahead here on the National Desk, America's News Now. More information available to vet migrants at the southern border, how the policy change could help keep criminals from gaining asylum. Plus, easing the bus driver shortage, how some districts are using artificial intelligence to make their systems more efficient and give parents more peace of mind. Immigration judges and asylum officers are now being given more access to classified information to help them determine if a migrant poses a threat to public safety. That's according to a report by NBC News. According to the network, the policy change was announced in a memo by Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas earlier this month. The report states this move overrides a 2004 directive that said classified information could only be used as a last resort. A suspected top assassin in Mexico's Sinaloa drug cartel has been extradited to the U.S. He's expected to face charges linked to drug and weapon smuggling. Joining Angelo Brown to discuss is former acting commissioner of Customs and Border Protection, Mark Morgan.
Now let's first begin with this Mexican cartel assassin who is extradited back to the U.S. According to the Justice Department, Nestor Salas, also known as El Nini, was a top assassin for a major drug cartel. When you look at this big picture here, is this a win for law enforcement, or will someone else just come in and take his place?
Well, it is shows the ongoing persistence and commitment and the men and women of law enforcement to continue to target the cartel. But the reality, unfortunately, any prolonged benefit, as you suggest, is going to be temporary. He's already been replaced. Now, look, that's not a negative against the agencies that are responsible for targeting cartels, but it is a negative on the strategy of the United States government. Look, for decades, we've used the traditional criminal prosecutorial method to go after the cartels, much like we did the mafia, but it has failed for decades. I agree with former AG Bill Barr that says we have to fundamentally change that strategy and use a Plan Colombia style method, and that includes using the United States military. I'm not suggesting we roll tanks into Mexico. What I am suggesting is, though, we can use the military through a precision and surgical kinetic operations to go at the heart of the cartels. We have to formally change how we view them. They are our country's enemy, and we need to start treating them as such.
I'm just curious about that. You said the military, kind of like going in special ops type of operations. Is that what you're saying here?
That's exactly right. With the cooperation of Mexico, absolutely.
Okay, now let's talk about this bipartisan border bill. Died once again, this time in the Senate. Now, everyone expected it to fail. So why do you think this was brought up again? Was this just another political play?
Absolutely. You're absolutely correct. This is nothing more than political theater. It wasn't a serious bipartisan bill. Chuck Schumer knew it had no chances of passing, and that's why we've been calling this nothing but a sham bill. This wasn't about substance. This was about political strategy. He knew that the Republican senators would vote no, but that's what he wanted. So then he could go out there and falsely claim that they wanted this issue in November rather than actually securing our border. And he actually encouraged Democrats who are in a tough race in November to vote yes for it so they can feign that they were tough on the border. And it's all just a political strategy, and it's just another reason why there's no faith in American people Congress. If Chuck Schumer would have been serious about actually reversing course of the open borders, he would have passed H.R. 2 when it was passed by the House a year ago, the strongest piece of border security legislation that's ever been passed. But it's sat on his desk for a year. That's why this isn't a serious bill. It was a sham and political strategy from the get-go.
One thing, though, that is clear is the serious problem that we do have at the border and violent offenders still slipping into the country. We've talked about this so many times in the past, but this recent article in the New York Post warning about the vetting process is actually coming from a border agent. You talk about the vetting, you talk about fingerprinting, running a name through the system, etc. Now, this agent said the turnover is insane. It's less than 72 hours. 72 hours to get all of this done. At least that's what this agent is saying. What's going to slip through the cracks here?
It already has. Look, that's why we say the Border Patrol's mission has fundamentally changed from that of being a law enforcement and national security mission to a processing enterprise. Look, the past 40 months, Border Patrol has encountered over 48,000 criminal illegal aliens. That's a 99% increase from FY17 to 20 combined. And the reality is, what people don't understand, the big lie is they think that everyone we encounter, they're properly vetted. That's just not true. Think about it. If we encountered an illegal alien from Lebanon, Cuba, or China, and we fingerprint them, do you really think that those countries are cooperating with us and giving us their criminal information back before the release? No, it's not happening. We're getting zero from them. And even countries that we do have diplomatic relationships with, oftentimes their systems are outdated and archaic and unsophisticated. We're only getting partial data. Every single day, we're releasing people into this country that we apprehended that we know virtually nothing about. The alleged killer of Laken Riley, we encountered that individual. And the reality is, you don't go from an upstanding citizen to becoming a savage killer overnight. The reality is, had we actually gotten his criminal background, I guarantee you it would have shown a long list of criminal activity.
You can view the full interview plus more top stories online all the time at thenationaldesk.com. It's no secret there is a bus driver shortage across the nation. And according to the Economic Policy Institute, the number of bus drivers in U.S. K-12 schools dropped 15.1% since 2019. The National Desk, Jeff Harris, explains what some school districts are doing to solve this problem.
For those districts facing a bus driver shortage, and there are thousands of them, artificial intelligence is becoming a popular tool. But not only to get kids to and from school with less drivers, but also to give parents peace of mind.
A mom of four living in suburban Pennsylvania, Amy Kennedy tells us there are days she feels the effects of the bus driver shortage.
Little things like having to do double bus runs, buses sometimes taking a little bit longer.
But overall, she says her district has been handling the shortage better than others, in part because of artificial intelligence.
You can set areas like little circles on the map so that when your bus comes past that circle, it pops on your phone.
The district uses a company called TransFinder. Using artificial intelligence and routing optimization, the software company tracks each bus and helps drivers pick up more kids as safely as possible.
Maybe instead of having 2 or 3 stops in an area, we go down to only 1 stop.
TransFinder CEO Antonio Civitella tells us this software is becoming more popular across the entire nation because not only is there a dire need for drivers, but also communication.
There's a shortage everywhere, but if you don't, it's the miscommunication is what hurts the community.
And communication is everything for busy parents like Amy.
It makes me feel that my children are that much safer and that I have more control over the situation.
Right now, TransFinder is being used in about 2,500 school districts across the entire country, and we're told they could add hundreds more this upcoming school year. I'm Jeff Harris reporting from Washington.
Still ahead here, banning bags, where grocery stores are cracking down on the size of reusable shopping bags in an effort to curb theft. Plus, a string of fires in Maine linked to lithium-ion batteries. The advice from a fire chief on how to prevent the devices from overheating. The National Desk team of reporters is bringing you the headlines from coast to coast. We're taking the pulse of America, and we begin in Nevada, where a drug meant for horses is increasing concerns for first responders.
And I'm done with death. I'm ready for life.
Kevin Little has a new perspective on life after his most recent stint behind bars.
I got out this morning doing fentanyl. I've been doing that for the past 2 years. Been using that frequently, daily.
More recently, he was hit hard, finding out that his fentanyl was laced with xylazine, also known as the zombie drug. Xylazine is a non-opioid sedative or tranquilizer, and it can be smoked, snorted, swallowed, or injected. Most of the time, people don't know it's present in other drugs, similar to what happened to Little until dealers told him. His drug use led to crime.
I've lost everything, man.
He hopes to educate others on how dangerous these drugs can be in more ways than one, saying he's thankful to be alive.
I don't know if it's luck, but man, I must be the luckiest guy in the world, man, because I've lost too many, man.
To D.C., where a grocery chain is implementing new rules on the size of bags customers are allowed to bring inside stores. These rules are only being enforced at certain Giant locations, and it's rubbing many shoppers the wrong way.
It makes it extremely inconvenient. I get it. A lot of people have been taken from the store. But there are so many things that are already in place that the people who are walking out are going to walk out anyway.
In a statement, Giant Food said they initiated this policy at stores that are experiencing higher levels of product theft. In Portland, Maine, our station WGME has been tracking a string of fires linked to lithium-ion batteries. The fire department is doing everything they can to mitigate the issue, but Fire Chief Stephen Caswell is offering this advice.
Make sure they have the trademark on them. Make sure you use the charger that's made for it. Warm weather is approaching. Make sure you have it in a ventilated area.
There have been 7 reported lithium battery fires in Maine since the start of last year. Up next here, the story's going viral on our website, from a warning about hidden cameras used by burglars to Walmart charging the wrong prices for hundreds of items. Taking a look at the top trending stories on our website right now. Police in California warning homeowners to watch out for hidden cameras placed by burglars in their yards. Glendale police posted a bulletin warning about the scheme they say is likely run by South American theft groups. Walmart charged the wrong prices for 1,600 items at stores nationwide for several days in March, according to Bloomberg. The problem was caused by an internal system failure. Walmart says 80% of overcharged customers received a reimbursement. A school in Florida has developed a unique way to keep kids off their phones during class. Students in grades 6 through 12 are required to place their phones in pouches that are unable to open during the school day. Those stories and much more available right now at thenationaldesk.com. This past Memorial Day weekend marked the worst for the U.S. box office in nearly 3 decades. Analysts are blaming the lingering impact from the Hollywood strikes. According to ComScore, ticket sales for the weekend through Monday are estimated at $128 million. Last year, they were at about $205 million. That's partly due to the blockbuster performances of Oppenheimer and Barbie. The #1 movie is projected to be Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. It's estimated to rake in about $32 million. The U.S. has now returned $80 million worth of stolen artifacts to Italy. The European nation celebrated the return of almost 600 antiquities this week. This includes bronze statues, mosaics, and manuscripts that were looted from grave sites and sold to private collectors and museums in the U.S. The Manhattan prosecutor and his team responsible for seizing the items say they have at least 100 more valuables that will also be returned. Ahead in our next half hour, boosting military readiness. One senator's push for an increase in defense spending. The countries, he says, are running laps around the U.S. You're watching the National Desk, America's News Now. You can catch us live weekdays from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time, and anytime online at thenationaldesk.com. We'll be right back.
The National Desk, America's News, now.
From one trial to the next, a personal visit by President Biden sparks questions ahead of his son Hunter's gun trial, how the case could impact Biden's re-election chances. Plus, the partisan divide over how to power America. 24 Democratic-led states team up with a plan, how Texas is taking a different route. And later, increasing affordability, the new program allowing certain home buyers to get a mortgage with 0% down. The Fact Check team explains which Americans are eligible. From the nation's capital, this is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Dee Gatton. Thanks for being here. Well, one trial involving former President Trump has ended for now. Another involving the current president's family is about to start. As national correspondent Matt Gelka explains, Hunter Biden's criminal trial could add fuel to an already explosive election season.
While Donald Trump's trial dominated late spring, Hunter Biden's could own the summer. The first criminal trial for the president's son is set to begin next week in Delaware. He's facing federal charges related to a gun purchase and lying about drug use in order to buy the weapon in 2018. President Joe Biden visited his late son Beau's widow, Hallie Biden, days before she's set to testify in the trial. Hunter was dating Hallie at the time of his alleged crimes. Critics question the visit.
How about a phone call to Hallie to commemorate, to commemorate Beau, just so you don't look like you're tampering?
It's poor decision-making, very bad optics.
The White House says the visit was about the 9th anniversary of Beau Biden's death this week.
She is family. She was married, obviously, to his late son.
The trial could drum up embarrassing details about Hunter's life: drug addiction, divorce, compromising pictures, his laptop, and documents related to his estranged daughter are all materials involved in the court filing. It could all be a damaging distraction for the president as November gets closer.
If I were advising him, I probably would have said, Joe, this would be unusual, but given the situation you're in, I think you should pardon both Trump and your son. And that way it kind of gets rid of the issues.
In another twist, London Roberts, the mother of Hunter's estranged daughter, is releasing a tell-all book as the Democratic National Convention is going on in August. It's being published by the co-chair of the super PAC supporting another Biden election foe, independent candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Hunter Biden is also facing federal tax fraud charges in California. That trial has been temporarily postponed until September. For the National Desk in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka.
Right now, New York prosecutors are considering new charges for disgraced movie mogul Harvey Weinstein. More claims of sexual misconduct have been made against him, and prosecutors are assessing which fall under the statute of limitations. A new indictment would come ahead of Weinstein's retrial for previous rape convictions that were thrown out in April. Prosecutors say they're aiming to update the court at the end of June. The man convicted of attempting to hold former Speaker Nancy Pelosi hostage and attacking her husband with a hammer apologized in federal court this week. David DePape said, quote, "Looking back, I see I wasn't well." The judge reopened his case because DePape was not given a chance to speak in his previous sentencing hearing earlier this month. The judge resentenced him to 30 years in federal prison. On Capitol Hill, one side of the Republican Party wants to slow spending. Another wants to ramp it up, specifically to boost military readiness. Mississippi Senator Roger Wicker is calling for an additional $55 billion in defense spending for next year. The top Republican on the Senate Armed Services Committee wants to raise it to 5% of GDP over the next 5 years, up from 2.9%. He cites threats from China and Russia, both of which he fears are lapping the U.S. in military capabilities. This will likely be viewed skeptically in Congress. A recently passed budget bill aims to limit spending growth to tame inflation. A new report by the human rights group Amnesty International found last year had the highest number of executions around the world in nearly a decade. The group says there were more than 1,100 executions. That's a 30% increase from 2022. The rise was driven by a nearly 50% increase in executions in Iran. It's actually the nation with the most executions, followed by Saudi Arabia, Somalia, and the U.S. These numbers do not include China, North Korea, and Vietnam. The White House revealed new information this week on a commitment with nearly 24 states to modernize the electric grid, a move it says will lower utility costs for Americans and reduce power outages. The initiative looks to expand the capacity of the U.S. power grid and update aging infrastructure. As part of the agreement, the 21 states taking part will prioritize efforts to adopt modern grid solutions. Historically red Texas is going green, not when it comes to politics, but green energy. Texas is undergoing an energy transformation, now embracing wind and solar power. Is this a model for the country or a political dead end? Joining Angelo Brown to discuss is Scott Lincecum, Vice President of General Economics and Trade at the Cato Institute.
This is so fascinating. For the first time in March of this year, Texas generated more electricity from solar power than coal. This pushed California in second place from its stronghold of more than 20 years. And it got me looking at some numbers after that. Now, when you look at Texas, their solar market shares topped 10% of ERCOT in March, while the market share for coal fell 9.1%. Now, this all right here is coming from the Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis. Now, we all know Texas is a red state. Is Texas, in this case, an outlier, or is this realistic for other states?
Yeah, well, they're an outlier in one way, and that's really on the regulatory side, because that's the real story here. You know, a lot of places offer subsidies for green energy deployment and the rest, but what makes Texas special, and the reason Texas is now leading the country, is that Texas makes it easy to build and to connect new renewable or any energy projects in Texas, while a lot of other states carry out really protracted study requirements and other regulatory hurdles. So as a result, new power generation comes online in Texas in about half the time it takes elsewhere. And that's a big lesson, not just for renewable energy and not just for Texas, but about broader regulatory reform too. We are offering all these subsidies for all these green energy projects. And some of them might just make economic sense regardless, but they get bogged down in permitting and interconnection and other regulatory things. If we just remove those supply side hurdles, we might get more of what we want without all of those subsidies.
So basically what you're saying, the regulations in Texas make this more attractive. Is there something we can do, you think, on a federal level, some sort of
well, for sure. I mean, adopting more of a Texas model for the regulatory regime would be really helpful. You know, just simply making it easier to build and connect these projects, to get a permit without going through environmental impact studies that can take years and years to complete. If you just do it like Texas, well, you could have a lot more renewable or any energy online a lot faster.
You talk about subsidies and deals in order to get people to go green or even buy electric cars. I mean, that was the number one thing a lot for the Biden administration. But there's a political divide about how people see renewable energy, about how people see EVs. Now, we found this, we grabbed this from Morning Consult. They conducted this for the Wall Street Journal. Now, this is a political divide right here. 31% of people who identified as conservative said they had a favorable view of EVs compared to 66% of liberals. Now, a lot of things are driving this, you know, but what do you think can kind of bridge that divide in terms of how people perceive whether it's green energy or even EVs?
Yeah, it's hard. It's a hard divide to bridge. And it's because this is a classic problem that arises with a lot of industrial policy. You know, politicians campaign on their big subsidies and the projects that they've brought to their districts, but that causes people in their other party to reject or oppose a product just because they assign it to their partisan opposition. And in this case, that's exactly what happened. President Biden and congressional Democrats are running around the country holding photo ops and ribbon cutting ceremonies and campaigning on these EV subsidies and these EV projects. And what happens? Well, Republicans start souring on EVs because they associate them not with good technology, but with re-electing the president and congressional Democrats. Now, it might not be totally rational, but it's totally understandable. And it's a big risk when you have the government trying to push one technology over another.
And you can view the full interview plus more top stories online all the time at thenationaldesk.com. Nissan is urging owners of up to 84,000 older vehicles to stop driving them due to a risk of exploding airbag inflators. Since 2015, one person has died and 58 were hurt due to the malfunction. The recall specifically targets 2002 to 2006 Nissan Sentras, 2002 to 2004 Nissan Pathfinder SUVs, they're listed right here on your screen, as well as 2002 to 03 Infiniti QX4 SUVs. Nissan dealers can replace the inflators for free. We have a link on our website to find out if your car is affected. With 30-year fixed-rate mortgage rates hovering above 7%, consumers are looking for other ways to purchase homes. I'm with Courtney from the Fact Check team. Many Americans don't have tens of thousands of dollars to cover that down payment, but there's actually a new program that could take some of that stress away.
There is, Dee Dee. United Wholesale Mortgage, which is one of the top mortgage lenders in the country, announced a new 0% down mortgage program that'll allow buyers to pay 97% of the home's value with a first mortgage and then provide a second mortgage for 3% of the purchase price up to $15,000. And that second mortgage won't have any monthly payment requirements or interest, but it'll need to be paid back in full when the first loan is refinanced or paid off, whichever comes first.
There was a time, remember, when no money down mortgages, they were popular.
There was. In fact, according to the National Association of Realtors, 4 out of 10 first-time homebuyers used no down payment mortgages in 2005 and 2006. But other than Veterans Affairs and Department of Agriculture zero down loans, they pretty much disappeared after the 2008 market crash, though they have come back around every few years since then.
Okay, so for the United Wholesale Mortgage Program, tell us who's eligible for that.
So there's a catch. To qualify, borrowers have to be at or below 80% of the area median income for the address of the property they're buying, or one of the borrowers has to be a first-time home buyer.
All right, the other night we talked about the 40-year mortgage versus the traditional 30-year. So many people clearly looking for strategies to afford a home, so we know this will resonate with lots of our viewers. Courtney, thank you. And for more on this Fact Check Team topic, including links to their sources, scan that QR code on your screen or visit thenationaldesk.com. In your money, U.S. consumer confidence unexpectedly improved following 3 straight months of declines. The Confidence Board's index jumped to 102 points in May from 97.5 in April. Analysts had expected to see a slight drop. However, it wasn't all good news. The index actually found inflation worries persist, with many households expecting higher interest rates over the next year. The IRS is making its free online tax filing service permanent. Direct File was piloted this year in only a dozen states for people with simple W-2s. According to the agency, more than 140,000 taxpayers used it this past tax season, claiming more than $90 million in refunds. The IRS hopes to expand the program, asking all 50 states and D.C. to integrate it in their state tax systems. So to come on the National Desk, our team of correspondents breaks down this week in Washington, from Anthony Fauci testifying on Capitol Hill, President Biden's plan for the border crisis.
Welcome back. Our Washington Bureau covers the nation's capital every day, reporting on the important issues facing the country and how they impact you. Our team of correspondents is here to share their insights on the stories they've been covering. Monday, former top NIH official Anthony Fauci is set to be grilled by lawmakers on Capitol Hill for the first time since he retired in 2022. National correspondent Matt Galka, what do we expect him to be asked about?
Well, I think grilling is the exact right word that we can expect. A lot of this is going to center around another hearing that happened recently, where one of Dr. Anthony Fauci's top advisors was hauled before Congress because of emails and messages he had sent within the organization talking about avoiding FOIA and public records requests and deleting messages and going to a private email server, where he also said that Dr. Fauci went to that server and may have also deleted some of those FOIA requests as members of the media and other people were trying to get more information about COVID, its origins, and the responses that the U.S. had come up with at the time, whether it be lockdowns or the other policies that were very controversial at the time. So all of this was already fleshed out in another hearing with one of Dr. Fauci's advisors, and you could expect Dr. Fauci to get an earful about that, as well as, again, the COVID origins, the lab leak theory, and other policies where Dr. Fauci recently said in a closed-door testimony with this committee back in January about 6 feet apart and social distancing. It just sort of happened without much research. So expect to hear a lot of that. Maybe some fireworks to expect early next week, Steve.
4 years after the pandemic started and still tons of controversy. Meanwhile, the number of migrants crossing the border illegally, over 10 million since President Biden took office. National correspondent Christine Frizzau, any updates on how the administration is dealing with the border crisis?
Yeah, and there are indications that number is even higher. And, you know, I should say that number is significant because that's how many undocumented immigrants were believed to be living in the United States in total just before Biden took office, which means in 3 years, the population has doubled. Now, the long-term implications are really difficult to determine. But for now, we've seen local governments, whether it's police, school systems, hospitals, and other departments, footing the bill to help care for them. There has been a strain on the system, and that's one reason we're keeping an eye out for President Biden to take some action as soon as a few days from now in terms of using executive orders. Mexico's elections are on June 2nd, and we're hearing the White House may act shortly after with provisions giving him the authority to shut down the border if the numbers get too high, but also to make it potentially easier for some people already here to get work permits. So that's something we're all going to be keeping an eye on in Washington.
And national correspondent Kayla Gaskins, the federal government has allocated $7.5 billion to build thousands of electric vehicle chargers across the country. How's that playing out?
Well, Steve, it's not going too well for the Biden administration, or it's not going very fast, I should say. That $7.5 billion investment so far has only built about 8 chargers. That's across the entire country. Critics are calling that rate completely unacceptable, saying if anything at that level was to happen in the private sector, it would be a very big problem. Now, transitioning Americans to electric vehicles has been a big part of Biden's presidency. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg was actually pressed on this topic, and he had a really hard time giving an explanation. But there could be one possible explanation for this, even though I'm sure it's a multi-pronged issue here. And that goes to a University of Michigan study, which says there just simply is not enough copper to transition the world from gas-powered vehicles to electric vehicles at the rate leaders like Joe Biden want. Basically, we talked to the leader of the study, and he explained the world would need to double its copper production because copper is used in everything from the batteries the car needs to expanding the electric grid to creating the chargers. Copper is actually the most important element. Now, there is enough copper in the world. We just have to be able to get to it. And that means building more mines, which can take decades to make those mines profitable. So we can get there is what the leaders of the study say. But Steve, it's just going to take a lot of time.
Great reporting as always. Thank you. Back to you.
Up next here on the National Desk, catching criminals. The city putting up a network of license plate readers to track down suspects on the run. And later, Addicted America, Baltimore's deadly overdose rate exceeding that of any other large city as local leaders beg lawmakers for help. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. From a Pennsylvania daycare struggling to stay open as costs surge, to Texas police redeploying license plate readers to identify stolen cars and fugitives. We're taking the pulse of America. But we start in Maryland, where drug-related deaths are skyrocketing at an alarming rate.
Now dubbed as the overdose capital in a recent New York Times article. In the past 6 years in Baltimore, nearly 6,000 lives have been lost from opioids like fentanyl. The death rate from 2018 to 2022 nearly double that of other large cities.
Reporting was shocking. We always knew there was a problem, but had no idea the magnitude of the problem.
I asked Mayor Brandon Scott's office if he was aware of the magnitude of the crisis and what he plans to do moving forward.
This is a serious problem.
But it's not just a problem in Baltimore. Statewide data shows fentanyl is involved in about 81% of all deadly overdoses. Data also shows deadly cocaine overdoses last year increased by more than 18%. Do you think the legislature needs to do more?
Yes, absolutely.
Senator West says there should be a task force to help figure out a better solution.
Simply prosecuting is not sufficient. I mean, it will certainly help, but we need to get at the bottom. Why are people taking the fentanyl? And what can we do to educate people that they're flirting with death when they put a pill containing fentanyl in their mouths?
It's a resource booster. It's extremely valuable.
Austin Police Association President Michael Bullock says he's glad to see the return of license plate reader cameras in Austin.
We had them for a while, and they were a very helpful tool that we had, and then went away for quite a number of years.
In 2020, Austin City Council suspended use of the readers as part of a reimagining of public safety. 20 of the cameras have now been installed across the city and went online March 29th. Bullock says at a time when staffing issues put a strain on patrol officers, the new tool helps identify stolen vehicles and fugitives wanted for serious crimes.
As our resources are being spread thin, it's harder and harder for officers to be engaged and proactively looking for things.
Twice as much as rent. That's what childcare costs for families with 2 or more kids in Pennsylvania. Employees at a Johnstown daycare say since the COVID-19 pandemic, the rising costs have been continuous.
Ever since then, just the cost of living has just kept skyrocketing out of control, and it's kind of just forced us charge our parents and our children's parents to pay a little more money just to keep this place running.
Childcare providers say keeping the place running has not been easy, even with the costs they say they realize can be high.
We have to be able to pay our employees and those that are working here, and they deserve to be paid even more than what they are paid.
A brain implant using AI changing the life of a stroke survivor. How the technology helps the patient switch between languages. That's when we come back. Looking ahead to stories making headlines this week, Tuesday is Election Day in 5 states plus the District of Columbia. New Jersey is picking its candidates for U.S. President plus the House and Senate. Montana also voting for candidates for Congress. Also happening Tuesday, the former interpreter for LA Dodgers star Shohei Ohtani is scheduled to plead guilty in federal court. He's agreed to a plea deal on 1 count of bank fraud and 1 count of subscribing to a false tax return. On Wednesday, the 3 men convicted of chasing and killing Ahmaud Arbery are expected to ask for a new trial. They've previously requested to appeal the hate crime convictions against them. All 3 are currently serving life in prison. New details on a major breakthrough for a stroke survivor. Scientists at the University of California, San Francisco have developed a bilingual brain implant to help a man who became paralyzed nearly 2 decades ago. The implant, which uses artificial intelligence, helps the patient switch between communicating from English to Spanish. The patient first received the implant in 2019, but it wasn't until 3 years later that the scientists discovered a way to train the bilingual brain implant using AI. Looking ahead, it's news that's causing some pandemonium. 2 new giant pandas will be heading to the Smithsonian National Zoo in Washington, D.C. by the end of the year. The announcement comes after the zoo sent its 3 pandas back to China about a half a year ago when its loan agreement was up. China's ambassador to the U.S. says he hopes the pandas can help cultivate a peaceful and prosperous future for U.S.-Chinese relations. And that'll be all for us on the weekend edition of the National Desk, America's News Now. Don't forget, you can catch us live from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time. Check your local listings. You can also watch us online and catch up with the latest headlines on thenationaldesk.com. Thanks for watching the weekend edition of the National Desk. I'm Didi Gatton, and from all of us here, have a great week.